like get tossed right out the window the minute the boss fight starts. So
The boss part?
yeah,
Yeah,
Guess what's
Joe,
going on the blooper
Joe Bowie
reel?
got it.
oh boy.
Congratulations.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lions Pride Tavern podcast, Double Nickels, number 55. Tonight we dance with the fallen avatar and find out how we did in last weekend's raid. But before all that, let's start off with introductions. I'm your host, Fafford. I play a Dwarven Beastmaster Hunter in the awesome game World of Warcraft. Next up is JobUi.
Hi, I'm JobUi. Play a Worgen Frost Mage.
And Lorelei.
Good evening. It's Lorelei, your Night Elf Fury Warrior.
Epistle.
Hello, Epistle up north. I play Adrenai, Protection Pally.
Tapachino's not with us tonight. She had some real life, I think she was going to a birthday, I think is what she told me. So she's not here tonight. So maybe we'll catch her next podcast. Guys, how did we do this weekend? JobUi?
I think we did pretty darn good this weekend. We went through. We had a pretty full complement. I think what was it, like 26, 27 people or something like that. And we went through, took down Goroth. Then we skipped all the way to Maiden, and then went through Avatar and killed Jaden. And after getting through those, we finished off Kill Jaden right at the end, I think, on the first night, and then came back the next night. And in Heroic, we got down Goroth, and then we took down Harjatan, and we made some attempts at Mistress Sazine, and then after our break, we switched over to Sisters of the Moon, and we did fairly well on that one, getting Sisters of the Moon down to about 25%. We didn't get either of those two down that night, but we got in some pulls and some practice on those fights, and I think with a bit more practice and refinement, we should do better on those in Heroic. And start getting those down more often.
Yeah, we did get pretty close, didn't we? It felt like we were losing a few at a specific time. We lost like 4 or 5 people in a group. So whatever the mechanic was there, whether people aren't clearing their stacks early enough or whatever it is, if we can solve that, I think we'll be able to get that boss down easy.
Yeah, Sisters, I think it was just, it was like little things that kept doing it. I don't think it was any one specific mechanic. I think it was just multiple little mechanics. Like when you spread out, so you're not, during the shield phase, I spread out and then all of a sudden somebody would run over to me. It's like looking for a spot to spread out. And I'm like, no. And then I would run and then somebody else would bring me the fallen arrows, the big circle of arrows. They'd put that right on top of me. That was nice. I appreciate that. But I think it was just a lot of little things.
Yeah, people are back into the bad habits again of once a boss on normal we've gotten it down a lot and it becomes easy, then the mechanics seem to get forgotten.
Yeah. Yep, unfortunately. But now I missed the first part of Friday nights because I was coming back with my new boss from a 4-hour trip. It wasn't a 3-hour tour; it was a 4-hour trip. For all you Gilligan fans out there.
Feels like a Gilligan Island, yeah.
But so I missed the first one. I think I came in. You guys, I think Maiden you'd already gotten down because I don't remember doing it. I think it was Fallen Avatar I came in on, right in between it. So Maiden and Vigilance, were there any big hiccups there?
I think we had a right at the very beginning of the raid, wipe from again mechanic not being properly attended to, and then it was cleaned up, I think, in the second attempt, if I remember correctly.
I think there's also one bit of bad luck. I can't remember. Like, I know I got blown across the room at one point, which shouldn't have happened, but we recovered from that. But there was, a couple little hiccups that kind of messed us up.
Kind of snowballed, and we couldn't recover from it.
Yeah. So, but on the retry, it went smoother, and we got through it. So, that one still is oddly problematic. It's a little weird, like I would think that at that point it would be one of those things where it's just like on autopilot, pretty much just doing those mechanics. But it seems people still have trouble with it sometimes.
Well, and so do you think it's because, kind of like what Lorelei said, we've gone through them so many times. I mean, even though we still have a little difficulty on it, that they're either one. This is my opinion. They're either one. They get into it, and it's the second boss. First boss went down really easy because that's, Gorath. He's pretty much a tank and spank now on normal. And then when they go through that one, they're like, oh, well, the next one's going to be just as good, but they don't realize that's, the seventh boss, that we hit. So we're skipping quite a few there. And I think a lot of it is they get relaxed, and then they go into it where they don't want to be relaxed. They got to get a little more focused, because those mechanics, I've said this before, time and time again, the last three bosses, everybody's got to pay attention.
Yeah. I don't know entirely what it is. I mean, maybe it's just a little complacency kind of thing or whatever. It shouldn't be on that fight, because, we've had enough mess ups, and there's been enough chastisement and like, hey, get your stuff together and do a good job on this, try harder, focus in. That's been like almost a constant refrain on that particular boss. It would seem that most of the players would like remember that from week to week. I think it's just people get lost in their DPS sometimes. They just tunnel vision, and then they forget about doing the mechanics temporarily, and it doesn't take much. It takes one little oversight. You stop paying attention for 5 seconds when it changes, and all of a sudden you're on the wrong side and you're blowing up half the raid.
I totally agree with JoBui. It's a paying attention thing. There's still DBM does enough where you get anything I have to run with. I've said this before. I set my DBM to say run away. So that gives me a signal, an audio signal. Better make sure I'm looking at what I'm doing. It gives you the big sentence on your screen, which says if you're fell or light. And I also check off the icons. So I've got icons over everybody's head, so I know if there's somebody not on the right side. So that's 3 things that tell me where I'm supposed to be standing. And if I don't see it, it's because I'm not paying attention at all. But I noticed still when we had that the first time, somebody with a bomb on the opposite side of where I was standing at the time ran across the boss, and I'm not sure if that's where Epistle you got blown off, because they ran across behind where the tanks were over toward the opposite side before they jumped over.
I don't think it was, only because I was running out. Like, I was running in the middle. I had a bomb on me, and so it's running out. So maybe I got hit with it on the way, but then I think other people would have. So I'm not sure if that was the exact timing on it, but
yeah, it was somebody again. I'm not sure why they're running toward the other side before they jump over, because first of all, that's going to back on the wrong side. But yeah, it's got to be a not paying attention.
Oh, you're saying they left before the switch was required? They ran.
No, they had a bomb. They had a bomb, and I think it was just one of the 3. There's 3 people that always get a bomb. But instead of just running sideways and jumping over, I saw them running toward my side, and I'm like, oh my God. So I started running away, because you know what? I'll save myself. I'll save myself first. I'll say that. I will. So I backed away, but then they eventually jumped over, but luckily they didn't get far enough into our side to where they gave everybody the bomb. But then there was so much going on at that point, and I couldn't tell if that was what caused a pistol to get blown off, or because I couldn't tell where he and Gerard were. But it was just like all these little dominoes going over at the same time, and it's like, oh, here comes another one.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but I think that after that bomb fiasco happened, Durag, I think, might have pointed the boss at the wrong side, because then we had a whole side suddenly blow up.
Oh, no, it wasn't that. It's that I don't think it was that moment. I think it was a little bit later. But what happened there was that one of us was down, and then I was just getting rezzed back up. And the problem is then the mechanics are such that one tank has to hold it, but he was going to die. So
Right.
we were pretty much doomed by the mechanics at that point.
Sure. Yeah, it just all turned into a mess, and then there was a lot of sighing and, okay, just wipe it up and let's do it again.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of
Yeah.
Well, that
Okay,
almost
so wipe it up. Let's do it again. Mm-hmm.
the one Lorelei sounds like the guy panicked, and what he probably did is he downloaded JoBui's add-on for Weakors, and when the horn went off saying I have the bomb, he just ran.
Yeah,
chicken with the head cut off.
everybody knows by now you should not be running straight. Run
Yeah,
to
I
the
mean,
side,
it's-
run to the back, but don't ever run straight ahead.
Yeah, it's always it's into the middle. It's just take your bomb in the middle. And on normal, I mean, it's you got so much time to do it.
Yeah.
You can like hang out there for a minute while the bomb's ticking off. And I mean, there are times when I'm used to it enough that I go to the edge and I'll try and toss another spell or two if I have the time at the boss, and then I'll turn and take a step in and I fall for like a half second and then get popped right back out. As opposed to like jumping in super early and just hanging out in the pit, slowly fall until it kicks me back out. And plus, I think waiting also is also not a bad idea as we're moving into heroic. I mean, not that
Yep.
we're going to get there right away, but waiting is a good idea as for practice going into heroic, because they're going to have to wait when they go into heroic.
Yeah, because you can only drop so far before it'll throw you back up.
Right.
It throws
I think,
you back up
Yeah.
so far.
and I think it's what I think
It's like
you
2
got
or
to do
3
it.
seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 or 3 seconds left on the time before you can jump in.
What I've been seeing is when the timer goes, it's got the little circle above your head and it counts down. When it gets to 3/4 full, and then goes solid red, that's when you want to jump. That gives you a couple of seconds.
So I think the reason we're having problems though is situational awareness. So I think it's knowing where you are in the fight, like physically where you are positioning wise, but also sort of not only where you are in your rotation, which some people kind of tunnel vision on, but it's also knowing what's going to happen next and anticipating damage, anticipating some mechanic. I think we still have people who still are working on that situational awareness piece. They don't have all those things sort of second nature, and so it makes it a challenge. And when an air horn goes off, you do become the sort of the chicken with your head cut off. Now, this is the pain of the tank, though, right? Because you always have to know where you are and where everyone else is, and that's just a thing you have to always have in your brain. And if you've never played a tank in Warcraft and you've always done DPS or always done healing, it doesn't necessarily or hasn't demanded as much of you. I think this fight just demands you have to have that situational awareness to a pretty high degree, more than a lot of other fights. You can't just sleepwalk through it. And if you try, you could wipe the whole raid. So that's kind of a tank reality, right? You just have to be on your game and totally awake and aware all the time.
That's true, and that's true of everybody, and that's where you'll stop making those mistakes. And I as a DPS can't just worry about where I myself am standing. I need to think about where's that boss going to go, where are the tanks, how close can I get to the tanks, where's the healers, and I always have to have a plan. Where am I going to run? Because sometimes I'll turn around when we get the orb phase, and I'll switch over to the other track if I see that there are people that, I think they might get bombs, because I kind of pay attention to who's on the side that I'm on. And if I say, all right, this person tends to grab the wrong orb or get hit, I go over to the other track so that I don't get near them. So it's always planning ahead. And
You're way situationally aware.
No, really.
I lag
and
behind
I'm going to
everybody.
say that comes from raiding with the guild that I have for so long. that our main tank for most of those years always had these very long explanations, and part of what he included was where everybody needed to be, what you needed to do. So I learned there are times when I have to face a certain way because I know I'm going to have to run that way, like the old Thoth fight in the room with the big dinosaur, and you had to run down the hallway. Well, I had to learn, well, I know he's going to pick somebody. I better be facing the way down the hallway because 9 times out of 10 he picked me, and I'm always running down the hallway. So save a couple of steps. Be ready to go down that hallway just in case you get it. So be ready to avoid somebody picking up a bomb if you see them on your side. And it sounds kind of bad to say that, but that's the difference between me getting a bomb and blowing up or me not getting a bomb.
Yeah, the term that I've always used for that is raid awareness, as opposed to situational awareness. I mean, it is situational awareness, but I've always referred to it as raid awareness. Yeah, and I don't know, like how it comes about that you teach people that. I mean, it could be like what Lorelai's talking about, where, where you give them like the extra nuance of the dance steps, and you say literally face this direction when this thing is happening because it will give you this advantage, kind of thing, or what have you. And I do the same sort of thing that you do, Lorelai, where I avoid other players. But the way that I do it is I have two blinks. I have shimmer, so I can blink twice, and I don't have any other use for it on that fight. So after we get stunned, I blink twice, and that puts me pretty much clear across to the other side, and I am away from everybody else, and I am already in position. I'm usually the first person there, and then I collect a few balls, and then I watch as people start coming up from behind me. But I just basically try and watch and keep an eye out for that. I don't have to change paths or anything because I'm already in the final spot, and if somebody comes up there and grabs the wrong color ball, I'm kind of hit anyway. But that hasn't been happening as much lately. People stepping out of the final spot that they're supposed to be and grabbing a ball. But yeah, there are. I get what you're saying. There are going to be players that you have to watch out for. That that you just get used to the fact that no matter how much you try and get them to do the mechanics just right, maybe they don't hear you, maybe they aren't paying attention, maybe they're just not going to do it, kind of thing. And we had an instance like that on our Saturday or on our Friday night raid on Kill Jaden, where we had a player who needed to do something. There was an audible called. They didn't. They just stood there, and so we did a second audible where Durag then moved the boss because the player wasn't moving away from the boss like we requested. So the tank moved the boss away from the player, which pretty much saved that particular pull.
Oh, was that
we didn't wipe.
That was actually you called direct move, but I had it, and then I just heard him say move the boss, so I moved. So yeah. So it was actually a double thing. So we actually had to say to one tank, who then ended up saying to me, and we still had enough time, even with that delay, to react. But it's worth saying the person who was supposed to move had all that time where they didn't.
Yeah, and they stood in the same spot. I mean, as the rest of the raid adjusted for that lack of movement, that would have been really simple. I mean, that player needed to move 10 yards back, pretty much, and it would have solved the whole issue. But instead, the tank had to move the boss, all the melee had to move with that. The other people who had the same debuff as that one player had to move to where that one player was and stack on that person instead. So there was like this mad orchestra of movement that had to take place because one player decided or didn't listen or couldn't hear or whatever and just simply didn't move to adjust.
And to be fair, we were having Discord issues because
not
at
that point.
Not that.
Oh,
night,
that
though.
was on. I thought that was on Kill Jaden.
That was Saturday.
That was Saturday, not that night. We weren't having Discord issues on that night.
Yeah,
that
we got
particular player has a I think that particular player has a difficult time hearing us in general during the fights.
Okay.
Because that's been an ongoing issue where if I need to call an audible, and it's to that player that player needs to do the audible, or that or it's a general thing, and then I notice that one player doesn't do it but everybody else does, so I'm just not sure that one player can actually hear us.
You know what years ago I turned down my game volume in WoW because I just realized there's no way I'm going to be able to listen to all those beautiful game sounds and actually hear what's going on. So I
Yes.
hear the
Yeah, I
conversation
do
loud and
too.
clear, and then just way faintly in the background is some of the kind of white noise of the game. But of course, the alarms and alerts, the GTFOs or Deadly Boss mods, I have those up just slightly lower than that conversation so that I won't miss those. But yeah, the game noise is kind of a luxury background that I don't bother with.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
got the music turned off. You know, a lot of the dialogue is turned off. Yeah, just so you can hear.
I run mine at about 25% so that I can hear the players in the chat much clearer than I can the game. I still
Yeah.
need to. I need the sound for the game personally. I use a lot of audible cues for myself on things, so that's kind of a um, necessary thing for the way I like to play. But it's still much lower than the voices.
Audible cues, like as an in-game cues, that are actually just basic WoW cues or add-on cues that you've
Uh,
built in.
Mostly add-ons that I've built
Yeah,
in.
and so I kind of have 3 layers. Like the one layer is I have to hear crystal clear any conversation. Then I have to be able to be semi-interrupted by some of those warnings, and then below that is the game sounds way down below that.
But I mean, the point being still that I mean, that raid awareness, and players, that's another part of the raid awareness too, is the being able to hear your fellow raiders, and being able to react to what they're saying and the calls that they're making during the fight, because it's not just the raid leaders who are making calls out. I mean, other players have things happen, like in the Kill Jaden fight, a player can't take the large Armageddon, right? So they need to call it out. They say, I can't take this one. So then we adjust, and the next player on the list steps up and is ready to take that next large Armageddon and ready to handle that mechanic. And if they couldn't hear, then they wouldn't be able to do that. So that's really a part of being raid ready, I think.
Oh yeah, because otherwise then you're just in a looking for raid group where everybody just does what they want.
Right, which is also one of the requirements that we've always had with our raid group is that
Yes.
anybody who comes to raid with us has to be in the voice chat with us. They don't have to talk, but they do have to listen at least.
Yep.
So that's been an ongoing forever as long as I've been raiding with this raid group rule.
Well, yeah, one of the things Mommy Fortuna does is all the time after she gets everybody invited, she looks to see if everybody that's invited is in Discord. And she'll yell down to me, so and so's not in Discord, and then I'll whisper them and say, hey, you having problems, or can't you get in, and you're something not working. And especially
Sure.
with some of the new people that are coming in, that we invite in from, I think a couple of the guildies have, in other guilds, and they bring their guild members in if we have room. They got to be able to hear. I don't care how good you are, and if you know the mechanics and you know the fights, everybody does it a little different. So
Right, and a lot of times it comes down to, I mean, not just that, but there's the audibles during the fight that have to be
yeah,
called. As things happen and the situation changes. I mean, the best laid plans like get tossed right out the window the minute the boss fight starts. So
the boss part.
yeah.
Guess what's
Joe
going on at
Joe
Bleecker
Bluey
Video?
got it.
Oh boy.
Congratulations.
So what you're saying is it's difficult to herd cats.
It always is.
So
Yeah.
maybe Blizzard needs to make a cat dull prod.
Oh boy.
Yeah, engineers eating on that.
Yeah. It's a tough one. And the thing is and this the discussion has come up before amongst raid groups. I'm sure, as long as there has been like the flexible raid size that Blizzard implemented a couple expansions ago. But it's, like the question, like, is it better to go to 30 players or is it better to stick with your 15 to 20 players? I mean, you've got less cats to herd. There's, less things that can go wrong. There's less mechanics to deal with
Yep.
fewer players. So that question arises, like, do you really want to push for that 30 or would you rather go for a little bit less,
Have any of you guys ever done one of the 40 mans that were done earlier in
Like
expansions?
way a long time ago?
Yeah.
Oh, long ago, yeah.
I went on one, and it was so hard to do because he would explain it, and then everybody would do what they wanted. It's just like, really,
Yeah.
people? And I can't imagine those raid leaders. They must have been drinking a lot of whiskey.
Oh man, I don't even
Right?
think I would. I don't even think I would do. I have a hard enough time with a group of 30 cooperative people. You know.
I know, right? But I mean, can you imagine 40? I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge accomplishment if you can say, "Oh yeah, we got all the way through the whole thing with 40 people." It's like, wow. So you either had a lot of people that really listened, or you got lucky.
No, see, back then I tried it once, and because I wasn't in a hardcore raiding guild at the time, I tried it once with there was a friend of mine on the server who their group was going because there was no cross server back then, and they needed an extra player, so he asked me to come along, and so I went along, and it was a train wreck, and I was like, yeah, that's okay, I don't need to do that train wreck again,
I never want to
thanks.
do it again.
Yep. So I didn't do any more of the 40-man raids after that. I was really glad when they changed that up in later expansions.
That's what
So-
got me hooked on raiding.
Yeah.
It was
There
the 40
was a
really?
couple
The
of us
tough
that
ones.
got carried into. There was just somebody was going to run. I think it was AQ 40 man, and everybody was all lined up, and I had no idea what to do. Had never been in here before, and everybody started buffing everybody else, and the screen just lit up, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And then they just ran through because they knew what to do. And I'm just running in the back picking up stuff because I have no idea what's going on.
Trying not to get killed or kill everyone else.
Yeah. So
They
let's,
were pretty
let's-
much killing everything, but I'm running around going, "Oh my god, look at that! It's so big! Oh my god, is that a boss? Oh, what?"
Yeah, I did that too. Running around going, "Oh, look at me, little undergeared thing with all these,
Yep.
great heroic epic players."
So let's just pose that question. Instead, we'll come back. But so, what was your first raid experience, Pistol? How did you start? What got you into raiding?
Yeah. See, I played just at Burning Crusade, so everyone's into the new content, and I was way behind. So that actually set me back in some ways. I got up to 60, and everyone else was already trying to get to the 70 raid content, which meant I didn't get a lot of help leveling, or a lot of kind of guild advice or suggestions. Everyone was kind of preoccupied with their own game at the time. I don't blame them. I'd have been in the same way. But it just meant that my learning curve was a little slower, a little steeper, and a few times they went for a couple of, I think it was Molten Core they were doing, and they wanted to go back in and see if they could clean up the place, and of course they did, and of course I came along and everything that dropped was good for me because it was better than what I had. So I was picking up all the scraps that they were just kind of, would have melted or left behind.
Okay, yeah, but how did somebody invite you to the raid? I mean, what was your first raid experience? See, like my wife
I
and
had a friend. Yeah, I had a
Okay.
friend who was playing. Yeah, I had a friend who had been playing for a number of years, and one time he'd actually come over, and I couldn't figure out why he was really trying to get onto my computer and install something one night, it's specific night that he would really wanted to if it was okay with me. I said, yeah, that's fine. But so I looked over his shoulder, and it was Warcraft, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I didn't sit and watch the whole thing, but I watched bits of it enough to sort of go, oh, that looks like fun. I might want to try that sometime. And a few months later, I decided that maybe there was a sale or something, so I got into it, and the guild he went with was raiding, and so I joined them, and that was kind of always the long-term play in the game. It was like I'm just leveling to get to the point where I can raid with other people. But
Okay.
I would have been one of those people wandering around totally chicken with my head cut off, lost, not having any idea what to do at that point in time.
Yeah, because I remember when I first getting introduced to you, you were healing. You weren't tanking.
Yeah, that or my mage were my mains at the time.
Yeah, kind of interesting how time folds. How about you, Joe
Yeah.
Bowie? What did you? How did you get into actual raiding?
Well, I had that one bad experience way back when in vanilla, and I didn't really raid after that. I pretty much just did regular content in that, and I didn't actually get into raiding much at all because I took a break after or right around the time when I think it was when Burning Crusade came out, and I didn't come back till the very end of Wrath of the Lich King, and I didn't get into raiding right at that point. So right about Cataclysm, I would say, was when I had created some new tunes and joined a new server with a friend of mine who had gotten into playing WoW. And so I got back into it and was playing with him, and we made characters on the same server because, like I said, no cross-server raiding at that time. And then I found a guild to join because it turns out my buddy wasn't really much into raiding, and so I found a guild that was into raiding and started raiding with them, and then just started doing all of the raids from Cataclysm there on, and I've just been raiding ever since, actually. So I think that was really where my experience, with raiding got started, and that was more of a hardcore group. It was a very limited. It was you had to try out in that guild to get into the raid team, and it was pretty exclusive. But at the time the number of raiders was pretty limited too. It was either a 10 or 10 or 25 man raid or something like that back then.
Yeah, sounds about right. I do remember there being so much difficulty trying to get just that magic number and having to boot somebody or desperately trying to fill it in with a few people or leaving us a gap just hoping you could do it.
The word pug was invented.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but that didn't happen until later.
Yeah.
The whole pug thing. Wasn't that?
Oh no,
that was Miss Pandaria, right?
You could.
Well, the mechanized, the automatic version, yeah, but
the automatic,
you'd have to look. Yeah,
you had to go
look for somebody.
Exactly, you had to go into trade or general, and then throw it out looking for one more.
Right.
Please be awesome. Please be awesome. We need a healer. Actually,
it would take hours to fill a group.
And now you know why I got raiding on Atha a lot.
Yeah.
Because that was my healer. So, yeah, I just walk around some major city looking to get pulled into a group, and I always needed a healer.
So, Lorelei, you got any more to add for yours?
Yeah. I started out on Trollbane, and eventually ended up in the guild that I'm in now that started on Trollbane. We were called Devastate back then. And because I hadn't quite leveled up as far as the primary group of people, because we were a huge guild back then, there was the 25 people who could, like the officers and the veterans and people that had been there a long time, they would go off and do, I think everybody was doing Nax at the time, because I remember that was my first raid was Nax Ramus. So I was kind of in the secondary group with the people who weren't quite caught up yet. And that's where I really started raiding consistently. And then we went into Ice Crown. I was able to get into Ice Crown. But yeah, I agree, it was hard when you had a 25 member limit. And so we would have to sign up, and it depended on when you signed up and if how long you'd raided, and oh my God, and you'd
then
sit
someone
and wait,
didn't show,
and they'd be like, oh, I didn't get in, but I'm one of the ones that I stuck it out, and I'd be playing, and somebody would drop out, and then be like, oh, do you want to finish the raid? I did a lot of finishing the raids with the primary group until I got up to where I actually knew what I was doing.
Yeah, Charm's got a song about that. Here it is.
Reading's gonna start in 10, but you're not in. And they say you're in the guild's read team, left to do dailies. Been this way since 80, 'cause lately your deep seems slowly sinking, failing. Thought about re-rolling, and you scream, the West getting round comes free to us, 'cause you're just under the upper hand. Got some skills they don't understand, and you don't wanna plug raids tonight.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I've been raiding for a long time, but I've been raiding with people, and we've had people change in and out, but a lot of the tanks are the same. There's some DPS that have stayed, but I know the people that I raid with. I've raided with them for years, so we all kind of know what to expect from each other.
I'd get pulled into one. I'd be watching the trade chat in general, and I'd go every once in a while, but I wasn't really big into it. Our whole guild was family. I mean, we didn't have any extra people in our guild. The one that everybody's in now, it was strictly like 5 family members, and all we did was dungeon and run around and level, and then we'd all start a new tune and do the same thing until LFRs came out. And then we pretty much hit that hard and heavy and got an invite from a couple of people that went, you guys are pretty good. You guys should think about raiding with us. And then we got in with that raid group, and then it kind of broke up, and we sat down as a family and said, hey, are we going to do this? Because we got people, and Lorelei, you were with us at that time. JoBui was, because I remember him. I think Epistle was too.
I was in that alternate guild, but always running with you guys.
Yeah. And so we sat down as a family and went, is this something we want to do? Because I'm not doing it personally by myself. And so Durag and Mommy and me all decided, yeah, let's do it. We sat down and we had a family meeting. We sat down how we wanted the guild bank laid out, what level of stuff, of tier for the rank of people, decided on how we wanted it to run. Was it going to be casual or elitist? And of course we all went casual because, that's the way we are. But that's how we basically got started. And that was well, I want to say that was before Pandaria. Definitely. Because we were doing SOO at the time I'm talking about when we put our raid group together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right about when I started raiding with you guys, was right around that same time. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, it takes a long time to come up with a good raid group, a good solid raid group.
You know what I don't miss? Now that we're talking about all this, I don't miss the melodrama that I had before that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the melodrama. Oh, my goodness.
Well,
Guilds forming, ending, fights over loot, tension, anger, all that kind of stuff that I know a lot of people still experience, but boy, am I glad not to have that in my life.
Yeah. And what's funny is one of the ways that I ended up with this particular group was, I had made a tune on, it was Grizzly Hills where I was located before. That's where my buddy and I had made our characters and whatnot. And I raided with that one group on Grizzly Hills, and then, I just got fed up with the way the raid was being run with that group. I didn't like that. They did things like they insisted that I play a particular spec for my class that I just really didn't like at all and didn't want to play and that kind of thing. So I left that raid group, and there just wasn't any other raid groups really on that server to join. They were pretty much the only real hardcore, because it was such a low population server, and they were the only ones that were doing the content I wanted to do. Was the one I was just with that I had just left. So I transferred to Storm Rage, which is the largest server, well, at least at the time. I think it might still be the largest alliance server. So I switched to that one to look for a new guild to join to go raid. And then right after I switched, somebody was like, hey, you ever looked at Open Raid? And I'm like, no. And I was like, what's Open Raid? And then I went and checked out Open Raid, and then I found this group. And then I never really even, I think I toyed around with joining a raid group on Storm Rage, but never really joined a raiding guild. I'm in a social guild on Storm Rage now. So, I don't even raid with my guild on there. My guild doesn't even raid. That's how I ended up with this raid group, was just, trying to find a group that I got along with and enjoyed the raiding experience.
Yeah, Open Raid really facilitated that for a lot of people. I think that's what set us up together. But it's not really working now anymore, is it? That as a tool?
It still functions. Open Raid's still up. It's just I don't think people are using it as much anymore since it got bought out.
Well, we aren't needing to as much either, so we've got the connections.
Because when the new expansions come out, like when WoD came out, they didn't change anything of that. All right, well, I'll wait. Somebody's going to program it sometime. And then the next expansion came out, and they didn't change it. And they still, and I would send in tickets all the time. They're like, yeah, we'll get somebody on that. So it's like they lost interest in updating Open Raid. So I finally just said, enough. I'm done. It still said that you could be level 100 to get into a 110 raid. And it was just like, that's ridiculous, because there's no way of specifically judging or keeping people out, that aren't ready. Item level you could set, but you could only set it as high as I was. So if I was right at the bare minimum, I couldn't get anybody else in, above that, because I had to be that item level. It would only let you set it to the item level that the person who's inventing the event was. So they lost it. It is being used, but I don't think by as many people as it was.
In its time, it was useful for us, anyways. I think
Yeah.
that helped us get where we are.
You know, I just decided to just take a look, and apparently, in late June, because I mean, just to give you an idea how not so often I go to Open Raid anymore. Apparently, they have, they said like they have a new post on here, or they had a post on there talking about characters updating, new raids added, and changes to the site. And the too long didn't read on it was that backend fixes have been made, so characters should update, and the new raids have been added, and there will be a technical management transfer. So apparently, you know, he goes on to, you know, get into more detail about it. Apparently they were not, you know, after it got bought out, he wasn't given the ability to hire staff for maintaining the site and a number of other things, but apparently that's being fixed and it's been updated to some degree. So, I mean, maybe it's going to turn back around and start becoming more useful and relevant again.
Wish them the best, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a great tool, and it was kind of sad to see it go downhill for a while there. And they said that they say basically they're working on it, making it more up to date and useful again. Yeah, interestingly enough, I did not too long ago. A bit ago, I went in there and looked at my rating history, you know, as it was on my character on there, just to take a look at it. And it was kind of interesting to go back and click on a few of the raids from 2013 and whatnot, and see the names that were in there, and see which names are still in the list and which ones are, you know, gone to the ether. You know.
Yeah, I just popped on and looked, and I made 301 events. So, and I had an event for Friday night and an event for Saturday, because they are two separate raids. And then at one time, we were actually doing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're doing an alt run on Sundays. But I had 301 events that I did from Open Raid. Wow.
Now what's funny is like, now when I was going through my history on there and I was looking at that, now I raided with you guys a lot, but the thing was I got really lazy about signing up from week to week. What? For the Open Raid event, because you just knew I was coming. You know, I mean, you knew I was going to be there, so, you know.
Yeah, same. Luxury's a tank, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I didn't have to sign up, really. I mean, you knew I was going to be there. And if I wasn't going to be there, I'd tell you, like, the week before. I'm like, oh, I'm busy next week, won't be here, you know. But I did occasionally make attempts to sign up for those, but it's still kind of cool to go back and look at that data and just, like I said, to see the players that were there, you know, that had signed up at least.
So yeah, I was just looking, the very first raid event that I did, I had 25 people approved. And that was SOO. So that was back in May 16th.
I wasn't in that one, I'll bet. I bet that was just before.
I just clicked on it, it says page not working. So you can't look at the actual, and then it starts me back over. So, oh well, no biggie.
I see them all the way back to, I see some all the way back to like April 2013, I think, is when I see one there, and I see like some names that stood out there was, you know, obviously Mommy Fortuna, and you know, most of the rest of the names are names I don't really even remember for the most part, but Glory's Way is in that list.
Yeah,
Remember
he
Glory?
showed up a while ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of nostalgic, you know?
So, well, we should probably move on to our dance. So this is Dancing with the Bosses. What we do is we pick a boss, and we're just kind of going down the list. So this tonight is Fallen Avatar, and we're going to talk about specifically what each class does, what the tank will do during Fallen Avatar, in as much detail as they can, ranged and melee DPS, and we don't have a healing perspective. But I think that's why Tap keeps not showing up. She doesn't want to explain what she does. It's a secret. It's a double secret. So, JoBui, why don't you start us off with Fallen Avatar?
Okay, as a ranged and fallen avatar, the first thing that I do is when we're beginning the fight, I try and position myself at mid to long range from the boss. The reason for that is the boss is going to do a thing called ruptured realities from time to time that does damage that increases the closer you are to the boss. And at max range, the amount of damage that it does to me is minimal. And as long as I use my personal shield, my ice barrier, then I take very little or no damage at all, as long as I'm pretty far back. So that's the first thing I do. I also try and position myself so that I have a little bit of space between myself and any other player. And the reason for that is there's going to be a spell called Unbound Chaos that is going to put a series of 3 little swirlies on the ground, one after the other. And with those, I just like to take a couple steps forward and then maybe a couple steps to the side. Just as they appear, I step out of them just to the edge of them and then to the next spot, and just try and keep a minimal distance. That sometimes has to be adjusted. Like players might run towards me with theirs, and I've got to adjust which direction I go or what have you. But as long as I give myself a little bit of space, then I don't have to worry too much about that. I've got plenty of room to avoid those and not take unnecessary damage. So I start off, and we always like pop hero right at the very beginning, because the more damage you do to the main boss on the first stage of the fight or the first phase of the fight, the better. So we pop our hero. I'm pre-potting. I'm blasting the boss as hard as I can, and I'm keeping an eye on the ad. There's a big ad. So the Maiden of Valor, I keep an eye on her, and as the tanks are taking her to various different points around the room, where she's going to absorb energy. And I keep an eye on her energy, because when she hits 100 energy, she's going to cast a thing called Cleansing Protocol. And Cleansing Protocol is basically it's a raid wiping mechanic where all the players have to damage that boss. She has an absorb shield, and it's worth 5% of her total health, and we have to knock that 5% of absorb shield off of her, and then she'll lose 25% of her health, and then I switch right back to the boss. And it has to be done before she finishes the cast, otherwise she wipes the raid. There's a chance somebody might survive it for a second or two, but not really. So I damage her when she does Cleansing Protocol, and I damage the boss. The other thing I have to watch out for is there are these little dagger-looking things that come out, and they will shoot across the room and try and hit me. They are called shadowy blades, and they start from the base of the boss, and they will point straight at me, and they'll hit other players too. So now I try and take them to the wall, and if I'm too far away from one of the walls to aim those away, then I'll just kind of stand still. Hopefully other people move out, or I'll look and see if I can move it away from hitting other players. But for the most part, I try not to move it around too much unless I can take it to the wall. Then once we've done 4 cycles of the Cleansing Protocol with the Maiden Valor, then she'll die, because she loses 25% of her health each time she does that. And so she dies, and then the boss will absorb energy. When he hits 100 energy, he smashes the floor. We fall down to a big lava platform. It's like a cooled lava bit on the green lava. And then basically at that point, my job is to just try and hit the boss as much as I can, avoid the ruptured realities, which will smash the floor underneath us, destroying it. And I try and position myself at the far back edge of that, just at max range, so I can still hit the boss, and hopefully it doesn't destroy the platform I'm standing on. And then I also have to take care of dark marks. Dark mark is a debuff that gets around me, and that other players need to get into that circle with me. And then once it goes off, I'm the epicenter of an explosion that will throw the other players away from me, and possibly into the lava if they're on the wrong side. So it's important which side they position themselves. So as a dark mark player, I don't move. Once I make sure I'm not stacked on top of another dark mark player. But then once I'm clear of that, I just sit still, because that gives the other players the chance to position themselves. And if I'm moving about, it'll mess up their positioning. It might toss them in the lava by accident. So I just hold real still. The only other thing I might do with dark mark is if the platform is mostly dead, we may call what we call a sacrifice. All right. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to die, but what that would mean is that I would take my dark mark off by myself, and I would use like ice block, or a hunter might use turtle or something like that, to negate the damage. Or if I don't have something like that, I would just go off by myself and die without harming any other players, because there's just not enough room for players to get in it and get tossed, because they'll get tossed into the lava. And then I just keep DPSing the boss till the boss is dead or we're sinking in the lava. Yeah.
All right. Lorelei for Melee?
Well, we do all of that. What we need to do is also stay away from the unbound chaos, try to keep those in a tight, I try to do the little tight circle thing when I can, or if there's nobody where I'm at, I just take it to the back. I like to stay about 3 sections away from the boss so that I can use my, a lot of my attacks have cleave on them, so I don't want to hit her, but pay attention to the cleansing protocol, get away from the ruptured realities. I try to take the shadowy blades to the side. That's another reason why I like to stand out there. And when I'm dealing with the dark mark at the bottom, being a warrior, when I get thrown into the air, I like to use my heroic leap to come back down onto the platform rather than getting thrown off into the lava. But other than that, I mean, for the melee, it's pretty much the same for the ranged. It's just being where you need to be and taking out the Maiden of Valor when you need to.
Okay. Tanking, Epistle?
Have I mentioned that these last few fights get slightly easier for a tank? I'm hearing all this going, wow, that actually sounds like you're tanking it. It's so complicated. No, for us, it's not that it's simple. There's some precision work that needs to be done that we're still working on getting it perfectly done. But for us, it's about the positioning. So if you think about it as a fan and like a sort of a Chinese fan or that sort of fan with this little pivot on the center and it fans out. Well, the bosses at the peak of that fan, the main folding spot of it, and you have to either tank there or halfway back from the room. Generally halfway back just to avoid a couple different mechanics. But 2 tanks, you have to swap back and forth. What makes it more interesting is that because there's a number of lines fanning out, which you have to move the maiden into the middle of to make sure that she doesn't get that debuff, you have to be paying attention as to which one is live. So if you think of it as position A, B, C, D, E, the tank is going from the main tank taking the Fallen Avatar to maybe going to E, to switching to back to the center part where the boss is, to maybe A, to the center part, maybe to B. But you've got no predictable patterns, so you've got to really be on top of that. Sometimes using quick cooldowns, like speed cooldowns, in order to get somewhere. Sometimes you'll go from A all the way across to E. And to make it more interesting, of course, that positioning of her is going on at the same time as this tank swap still needs to alternate, because 2 stacks of the stacking debuff from the boss. More than that, you'll start to die. So I guess it's a little bit of high stakes. It's a quick dance between kind of center B, center E, center A, and then C, and then center. So it's kind of a little back and forth. Once you got that down, though, it's fairly straightforward for that stage of the fight from a tanking perspective. Having to use the cooldowns all the time because it's doing some punishing damage. And sometimes people are running about, so you want to keep it easy on the healers as well. But that's pretty much the core of the fight. We've not necessarily run out all the way out when it comes to rupture realities, but if the tank doesn't run out, then the melee are in trouble, right? They won't have any way to do damage, so it's kind of a negotiation between the two. The other tricky bit is the swap, quite frankly, because if you have both the maiden on you and the avatar at the same time, you could die pretty quickly, especially if you turn your back on the avatar, and yet somehow you've got to go from having the avatar to getting the main boss again The consequences if you don't handle that well as tanks is you lose a melee. So if the main boss isn't tanked, the nearest melee will get squished. So a little bit of the timing issue between that swapping. You have to, between the two tanks, know when you're going to be doing the swap. So fairly simple in concept. It's a little trickier in execution. Then the second stage, when you fall down below, it's really more a question of trying to position the boss out as far as you can out into the lava, and minimizing the amount of damage they're going to do to take out part of the platform. Other than that, most of the other stuff is what the melee and the DPS have to, all the other DPS have to try to avoid, like knocking you out, for example. If that debuff gets on down below and knocks tanks into the lava, that's pretty bad for us too. So, but everyone's handled that so well in our raid. I'm not too worried about it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm sure from healing, she's just, heals and does the same kind of stuff everybody else does. Stays out of all the things that are going to hit on the ground. I don't know if she gets the daggers. I'm sure she does, but the healing, just has to do everything ranged and melee does plus heal.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, daggers. I guess I ignored that mechanic in my description too, because as tanks, you also just have to make sure they don't hit you, or that messes things up too.
Yeah, we've had that happen a couple of times. I know Durag has said, "Oh, I got hit by daggers and I flew way out."
Yeah, just one more thing you have to keep your eye out, because I think in the chaos, people can't always control that. They might try to adjust a little bit, but they may not be aware where the tank who's on the outside of the boss is going to be.
Well, that's why it's ranged. I always stay to the outside edges, closer to the walls. That way, if I do get daggers, it kind of negates it. But I got to be able to stay close enough when we have to switch to Maiden for the shield. But a lot of times what I'll do is, I'll see it coming up and I'll just start working my way over there. But, all right. Well, great, guys. That pretty much wraps up dancing with that boss. Lorelei has an announcement and a challenge, I think is what we're going to call it. Yeah, so go ahead and tell us about that, Lorelei.
Well, the Great Gnomeregan Run is going to be held on Saturday, October 14th. Now, this one is a Blizzard event, but, and I think we've talked about this before, this will be a one-day event. It's sanctioned by Blizzard, so everybody's going to get it on all of their servers. And from what I've seen on the video, you can be any level to do it, because the gnome I saw running it was on the mage spinner. So this is all about Cancer Prevention Awareness Month, and it started from a group. I don't know their guild, but they're on the server Scarlet Crusade, the US server, and they decided in their guild to have a level 1 gnome race. And it's started out with a couple of hundred people, and it built up into, I think, well over 1,000, maybe over 2,000 last year. And they're still going to do their run. So it was a little confusing what I was trying to read about it. But Blizzard has decided to create this as one of their events. So that's going to be on October 14th. There's going to be more information on that. But an honest to goodness gnome run is done with level 1s, because you have to be running through some pretty bad areas and have all kind of things chase you and kill you. But I was listening to Mac and Dex on Goblin Goldcast, and they mentioned how they would like to see some of the podcasts run in the gnome race. And I think they're talking about the real one, the one that's going to be in May. So I thought that sounds really good, because they were thinking maybe they can start up a guild and put everybody in the guild. So I thought maybe that'd be a challenge for us, that we could pick a server, make a gnome, join, get on, whatever server they're on, and do a level 1 gnome race. Because if you have never done one, you are missing out on one of the greatest things ever in the game.
Yeah, so what I'm going to say is, let's go ahead and we'll plan it out. I'll talk to Max and Dex, the Goblin Goldcast, and if we're gonna do this, and you'd mentioned Scarlet Crusade was the original
Yes.
server. Okay, I think we should do it on Scarlet Crusade.
I do too.
But when you go to make your level 1 gnome, even for Max and Dex, right, and if you got people coming, maybe they're your fans and you want to do them, when they make their new character, have them put GG for Goblin Goldcast, and we'll put LPT for Lions Pride Tavern in front of our name. So, do Lions LPT Fafford, and see if that name comes up, see if it'll work. And that way, when everybody sees our names, they're going to see LPT before it all. You can't put any hashtags or spaces or anything like that.
And we should definitely use, like our names as our fans have come to know us on there, so they can recognize us if they happen to join us on there.
Yep, and you need to have pink hair.
Oh,
do you?
Oh, you do.
Pink hair.
Because it's for breast cancer.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Okay. Gotta wear pink hair.
I'm rolling my tune right now. What's the name of it again?
Scarlet Crusade.
Okay.
Could you imagine how fun it would be to do a gnome raid? Just gnomes.
Rolling a gnome.
The possibilities are endless.
The interesting factoid, AskJobui, although his name wasn't originally AskJobui, the character itself was originally a gnome.
With pink hair.
But I got a problem here, though. I can't be a gnome pally.
Oh.
No. Well, you'll have to pick maybe a druid.
Be a warrior?
Well, yeah, it's a warrior or a death knight. Yeah, I think warrior is probably closer.
So anyway, there's our challenge, and so guys, join us. We're we'll post it in our guild website, our Facebook page, and all that, so everybody will get behind it. I'm sure they will. It'll be a blast. All right, we got to get moving along, guys. So cue the music. It's time for Lorelei's Pet Battle Minute.
Happy Brewfest, Azeroth. If you haven't had a chance to stop by Ironforge or Orgrimmar yet, you still have time. With the opening of Blizzard's yearly Boozerama Fest comes a chance to get another awesome pet, the Elemental. Complete the first day quests along with the dailies, and you'll be able to pick up this pet for 200 Brewfest tokens. The Elemental was added to the holiday vendor during Mists of Pandaria. Just a little side note, for those who may be running out of time or having the RAM slow down too much during the Bark 4 daily, once you've gotten credit for that 4th announcement, you can click off the RAM icon, jump on your fast mount, and complete this quest. You don't have to ride him all the way back to get credit. Have you tried the new Pet Tamer Environir Burt? I've done it using a max level team, and I can't wait to try it on lower level pets. It's a bit of a tricky fight, so I'm going to experiment with my low-level pets, especially my elementals. I've gotten him down using an all-elemental pet family with fire damage. The Fell Flame, my Dark Phoenix, and my Pandarian Fire Spirit was a good combo. I only had to use the first 2 pets. Having a second pet with speed, though, is crucial. You need one. On the Horde side, Krissa is your new tamer. I'll have to try that one, but I haven't had time to slip over to the dark side yet. So good luck and give it a try.
The dark side.
Dark side.
And then there's
Getting Deeps with JobUI.
Today I just want to recommend an add-on that could help a player who is struggling to get down their rotation. It's called Tell Me When. What it does is show you important information about your class and spec, as well as show you a suggestion for what skill to use next to get used to your rotation. It has been recently updated for 7.3 and can help you refine your rotation as you should use it optimally. So if you're a player struggling to get that down, go get Tell Me When, get the appropriate profile for your class and spec, or I guess they're just all for your class, and use it to get used to your rotation. I'll post a link to the available profiles and to the add-on itself on our Facebook page. So go pick up that add-on and keep getting those deeps.
awesome. Epistles, tanking an address. Oh no, tanking minute.
What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking in a dress? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking in a dress?
What is wrong with tanking and dress? Okay, so today's Come At Me a Tanking Minute. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by a little pink gnome who's trying to get out of Gnomergon. So today's Come At Me a Tanking Minute, it's about gotta grab them all. Tweaking your gear just to get the most out of your tune. Recently, AoE tanking was broken for my class, for Pallies, in a good way. You could kind of adjust a couple of pieces of gear, and with the combination of a legendary and a 2-piece bonus, you could have almost unbelievable AoE threat, to the point where my fellow tank was getting really frustrated that I was just grabbing all the mobs all the time. However, with the latest expansion, I got some better gear, improved mitigation, so way better armor, way better health, but terrible threat. So it was very hard to get or maintain threat. It's almost like it went totally the other direction with just a couple of changes. So we were just fighting recently, as we're talking about on Heroic Sazine, experimenting with that a bit. The difficulty is there's some times where I really need to take most of the mobs, if possible, just for the betterment of the whole raid. So I was trying to think, how could I possibly tweak it so that I could get more AoE threat? Really important for a tank. Well, I looked more carefully and realized that if I just switched out 2 legendaries and dropped my ring and instead picked up the legendary pants that I had, I would get a little bonus for one of my abilities, my shield. And that I thought might improve my AoE threat. Well, wouldn't you know it, first pull, I'm back to pulling all the mobs, getting them all again. There is nothing anywhere in any of the sources that I've read that usually give me tanking information that tells me how to do this. And yet somehow, sometimes a little experimentation with the gear you've got, tweaking it, trying something different, might allow you to figure out something that you might not have otherwise discovered. So in this case, I found great AoE threat is relying on a good pair of pants. And that's Come At Me, a Tanking Minute.
Awesome. It's WFN News, Warcraft Fafford News. Command Center is up next at the Broken Isles with Forces of Order and War Effort. The weekly quest is Battlegrounds Bonus. Whatever. WoW tokens are 160, so they did come down a little bit. And that's in the States for this last week. The Harvest Festival starts Friday, and it goes for a week long. Go honor all those fallen heroes. Coming soon, one of our raid members, I'm not going to tell you who, will be starting a podcast and a live stream. So I'll keep you informed as this develops. I think there's still a couple of weeks out. That'll be another good podcast to listen to. So one other thing is that we had if people watched our live stream, we had our pirate costume for last week's Pirate Day. And so we had a pirate costume transmog event. And we all voted, and guess what happened again? We got a tie.
Of course.
So this one's between JoBui and Dizzy Flores this time. I will go ahead and post on the Facebook page. So if you want to add to it, by all means, please cast a vote there. I'll set it up as a poll. Pictures will be right below it, so you can see what the 2 outfits look like. We're just going to choose between the 2. And then we'll kind of combine everything and see what happens. So I want to thank Sharm for all of the beautiful music that we play on this podcast. Go visit our website and our YouTube channel. The links are in the description below. Plus, BenSound at bensound.com for doing JoBui's music in his background. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you, folks.
See ya.
Good night.
So, but we got to get rolling along. We're running a little late. So, cue the music. I hear it's time for Lorelei's pet battle music. I hear. Why do I keep every week I keep doing it on Lorelei's? All right.
Boss parts.
I forgot. I'm trying to remember what I left off with. If you like this podcast, throw us a like and subscribe to our channel. And please, leave comments or questions below. Maybe we'll answer them on the air next podcast. We are hosted on Podomatic.com. Our website is Lionspridetavern.podomatic.com. Our podcast also airs on iTunes for Apple users, Google Play for Androids, and YouTube. Just search World of Warcraft Lions Pride Tavern podcast. See you next week, and thanks for listening.
I kissed an orc and I liked it. The taste of his Bulgur chapstick. I kissed an orc just to try it. I hope my allied friends don't mind it. It felt so wrong, it felt so right. Don't meet up in love tonight.
Boss
What?
parts.